And so it was a highly territorial bird.
Look how different it looks from the
And it's banded, yeah.
It really looks different from the picture.
Uh-oh, maybe it's a different species. I've been wrong
Except for
all
the...
He doesn't seem to mind you holding him.
Yeah, well, you've been wrong. It's amazing you can use that hand to do it.
A lot of practice. A lot of practice. I'm pretty much at the point where I can hold a bird blindfolded and tell you the sex, probably come within a gram of the weight.
So this is your little...
That's why you dream of this at night.
Yes. So I'll pass these around, but these are the bands that we use. And so this is all, so I'm permitted through the U.S. Geological Survey. And so every 3 years I have to renew my federal permit. And so I have to be permitted to use a mist net. You saw how tangled it got. I probably extracted around 3,000 birds from mist nets at this point. And I'm still getting better.
Wow.
It's challenging. You really, every single bird is tangled in a different manner. So they poo on you all the time.
Oh yeah. You scared the crap out of him.
I'm pretty intimidated.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of little feathers come off. Do they do that when they get nervous?
Yes, they do. And so
like a dog when they...
it's a response that is called shock molting, and you won't see them lose any more feathers because they actually calm down after you have them. As long as we don't scream at them or make any loud sharp noises toward them, or that I cause him any pain. So they measure. So the stress hormone corticosterone is what we measure in birds to determine how stressed out they are. And so what we have learned is that when a bird strikes a mist net, it's stressed. And then it calms down steadily from there. I've actually had birds fall asleep in my hand while I'm in the middle of landing them. And then I have to wake them up to get them to fly out. Yeah, they really do. They calm down quite a bit. Anyhow, so this bird... So this bird is blue-yellow, white-silver, 2821601170. So I can look him up in my spreadsheet, and boom, I found him. So we caught this bird in a small ground trap, right over where we were mist netting before, actually, pretty close to it. And so we caught this bird on June 6th of this year is the most recent capture.
Oh, he's getting pretty used to it.
Yeah, no kidding.
When was the first banded?
A few weeks ago.
I only have this year's data, but 2821601170 is pretty recent band number, so I'm going to say that this year's probably June 6th, I said. It's probably the first time we caught this bird. And it's clearly... And so it was breeding back on June 6th, and I know that because they have a cloacal protuberance, and it becomes, when it fills up with sperm, let's see if you can get a look at it here. When it fills up with sperm, it becomes bulbous. That right there?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This bird has no fat on him. No fat whatsoever, and the fact that we caught him on June 6th and he had a large cloacal protuberance indicates that he was already mating June 6th. So that he has no fat on him is very common in these birds this time of year.
That's not anything to be concerned about?
Nothing to be concerned about. In fact, if he had even just the slightest bit of fat, that probably means that his nest had failed and he's not raising young. But I would say that he's probably raising young right now.
So everything's going to be young.
And so that's why he was so aggressive as soon as I played the song. He's like, "No, you don't. Get out of my territory." And that he's keeping a minimal amount of food for himself and is likely feeding some young. we already got most of the information that we need off of him.
So
And
all these
I'm going to take a few measurements.
Males of this subspecies help raise the young or help feed the young?
To an extent. Yeah, to an extent.
For the most part.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They also are very highly territorial when they have young in the nest. And so this guy has been singing a lot. You heard him singing when we were way up there. He responded immediately when I played a song. There's a nest here, and his nest has nestlings. I'm 95% certain.
Let's hope we didn't walk on
And
it.
so he's probably feeding the nestlings somewhat. But really the male's job is to make sure that all of the other competitors stay out of the territory so that the female gets all of the insects, because that's what they feed their young. Sorry, I didn't get back to that from like 20 minutes ago.
They feed what?
It's all insects.
Oh,
Almost
I thought-
entirely moth larvae.
Oh,
Yeah. And spiders.
Huh.
So like they eat a bunch of, say, ants and seeds, but they would never feed that to their young because it's too low in protein content.
whoa.
So they save all of the spiders and larvae, and if you watch them bouncing around, it's like they'll rip a dandelion head off and just like nom 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 nom. But when they find an insect, they hold it in their bill and they'll gather and gather and gather. And when you look at the nest video footage, sometimes they come back with 12 insects in their mouth, and their bill is so packed full, and they just start ramming them down into their nestlings.
How many babies do they usually have?
Almost always 3 or 4.
And do they have multiple
Yeah, so
offspring?
June 6th, this was an unbanded bird when we captured it.
Hmm.
I'm sorry.
Do they have multiple births, like
So,
one nest and then later in the
Yeah.
season more?
so each nest can have between 2 and 5 eggs, but they almost always raise 3 young. That's the golden number for the most part. Yeah.
But then after those young are born, do they have in the same summer? Like we have sparrows. No, we have swallows. And they usually have 2 sets of babies where we are.
Oh, right. So can they raise multiple broods?
Yes,
Down-
within a season.
Yeah, down here they can raise 2 broods. Up high elevation, 1 is all they get. So if they fail up at high elevation, they're done. And the fact that most of these birds don't live to see their 2nd year, it's their only chance in their life to breed.
And why is that? Now you've got that one female that is 8 years old. So what kills them off? Is it just multiple things? The weather,
It's mostly cats. Cats are outdoor cats are the #1 killer of all songbird species in North America.
I read
They kill
that.
more than 100% of their native predators combined.
I think I read somewhere like
Not
a
here.
billion
You don't mean
birds a
house
year
cats.
are killed by
Yes.
cats.
House cats in this valley.
Not here. When they're in South Texas,
yeah.
they get hammered by them.
We
But
have feral
all those
cats
do.
where we
Yeah.
are too, so I can see that.
Yeah, feral cats. But like pet cats have been shown to be just as bad as feral cats.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
they're just cats have such a strong predatory instinct.
Yeah.
Like they can't help themselves. It's like when I throw a frisbee for my dog.
Yeah.
There's
Right.
literally nothing I can do to stop him from chasing that
Yeah.
frisbee.
Yeah. Why do dogs
Or a deer. When he
run
sees a
after
deer.
frisbees? Because they
Instinct
do.
sets in.
Yeah, the instinct sets in. Okay. Sorry, you can keep asking me questions.
you're
I
busy
just get distracted a little bit. But it's fine.
He's cooperating with you quite well.
So I'll show you what I'm doing to.
Have you ever been pecked
Does
by
the
one?
female leave the nest?
Oh yeah, all the time. She's rarely on the nest, unless it's really
She's
cold. at
wearing
night.
it. I thought they had to keep the eggs at a certain temperature.
They
What's
do.
her hat?
101 degrees is the optimal temperature for embryonic development. And so at night they have to stay on the nest all night
Oh, okay.
to keep it because it's cold, especially up here.
Yeah.
But most of the time, during the day, the sun is so hot that if you think about your car on a sunny day, so that sun's striking their eggs. And so the eggs heat up. And so during the day up here, outside of when it's raining, say, They don't actually sit on the eggs. They just hover above the eggs and shade the eggs.
Oh,
That's
yeah?
yeah, just trying to keep it at that optimal
Jeez.
temperature.
And then once they're born, do they have to stay on the nest as often?
They do for the first 5 days because the nestlings cannot thermoregulate for the first 5 days. But then after that, they don't hardly ever go on the nest except to feed.
What are you doing there?
I'm measuring the width of the cloacal protuberance, which gives me an indication of how much sperm this bird has inside of him.
Compared to just the last time you caught him.
Yeah, and that's an indication of whether he's still breeding, right? So he's got young,
Yeah.
but he's still trying to breed with every female that's around here. And that's why he still has that.
That'd be pretty exact.
And so we usually take blood from these birds too. I can just show you real quickly, but I'm not going to take blood from them because we already got it this year. But they've got a brachial artery.
Alcohol?
So can you see that little artery right there?
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh
that's
my goodness.
Yeah, that's what we bleed them from.
Oh,
And so we just use a lancet, you know, also on this bird, they've got, so they preen, right? Birds preen like all the time. Sorry, I'm just making sure there's no birds in the net.
No.
And so the preen gland, let's see if I can show it to you. Right there.
oh my goodness.
So it secretes
Yep.
an oil? Is it an oil?
Exactly, yeah. They get little micro droplet of oil, and so when you see a bird, they're constantly biting the backside.
Is that common with most birds?
All birds. Yeah.
All birds, they have that preening gland.
They have that preen gland, yeah. And the preen gland, the size of it, is dependent on how much preening is necessary. So birds that are aquatic usually have much larger preen glands than, say, a terrestrial bird, like the white-crowned sparrow or the bittern. Another thing that we do is we measure the crown. And so that is their dominance signal. So having a wider crown, so this one's not a very big one, but having a wider crown in proportion to a wider white stripe in proportion to their full crown, that black to black or eyebrow to eyebrow, typically indicates a more dominant male.
So he's not, so would he be younger as a result?
This is probably a younger bird, which is probably also why we just caught him this year. So this is probably a bird that just came into this valley for the first time of its entire life in May or June.
So as they get older, if they survive, do they get a wider dominant, white?
They do, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, they do. And the females do as well. In fact, up at higher elevation, the males and females, so these birds are sexually dimorphic, so they have different sizes. And so a male's wing is larger than a female's wing. A male's tail is larger than a female's tail. But down here, they're like a good 3 or 4 millimeters larger, which is pretty dramatic for a bird that's only this big. But if you go up to high elevation, we have found that they're almost all the same size. Males and females, same size. And the males don't have a more dominant status or signal, which also kind of falls in line with that they are feeding more. It's like the males and females are much more equal.
Yeah, less distinction between the two.
High elevation just means in feminism. Shows they don't sing, but they will be more defensive. So if I play a male song, she'll fly at it. Whereas down here, it's almost always just the male that will fly at it. Can you hear it?
Wow.
So is that just the
Oh,
body?
that was the sweetest
Just the body.
little sound.
Sounds like a little motor.
It's a little.
Like a cat purring?
I put a hummingbird faster than that.